Guilty Gear Xrd rollback is here. To celebrate, I have created a beginner's guide for Ino, the time-traveling musician. Before we start though, I'd like to mention that strategies in this guide are suggestions and can vary based on playstyle, skill level, and matchup. So use the info here as a starting point and try different things out. If you have any specific questions, post them in the comments or come visit our stream on Twitch. Okay, first thing, let's do a brief overview of the character so you get a good idea on how Ino plays and see if she's the right character for you. To simply put, Ino is a mix-up character. This is due to one of her defining characteristics, her dash. When dashing, Ino hovers into the air, allowing her to do aerial attacks from very low heights while moving forward. This allows her to do high-low mix-ups that are hard to react to. She also has the ability to loop these mix-ups so you can potentially end matches off of one knockdown as long as you keep guessing correctly. As good as this is on Okizeme, this could provide challenges in neutral because unlike characters with normal ground dashes, she has trouble fine-tuning distances. To balance her offensive capabilities, her neutral and block strings are fairly limited. She suffers especially at the mid-range due to lack of safe options and conversions without meter. She does have strong options at long range, but a lot of them are quite committal and have a lot of risk. In general, she's a high-risk, high-reward character. The last thing to mention here is that to play her at a high level, she requires a lot of mechanical finesse. A lot of her damaging combos require at least one of these three properties. Fast inputs such as grounded normal to instant air dashes, timed inputs that cannot be mashed, delayed or charged attacks. The rough part about her is that the combo recipe and their timings will change per character, so to play her at near optimal levels, you almost have to learn a different combo set per character. To get an idea how different combos can be, you can watch and compare some of the character-specific combo guides on this channel. Of course, these are things you wouldn't pursue when you first start, but it's something you will eventually run into. If you like cool-looking aerial combos that are challenging to pull off, this is a good character for you. To summarize, Ino's dash allows her to do strong mix-ups that can be looped regardless of screen position. However, it may be awkward to move around in neutral. She has strong neutral options at close and long range, but many of them are committal and high risk. Her mid-range, however, is lacking compared to most characters. She is a mechanically difficult character that requires a lot of matchup-specific knowledge, but the payoff can be high as combos can lead to big damage in great Okizeme. Alrighty, let's start the gameplay guide. Before we go into details, let's look at the general game plan for Ino. Because her Okizeme game is incredibly potent, you want to get a knockdown to get it started. And once you do get it, you want to successfully mix the opponent up to get another knockdown. Ideally, you want to repeat this until the opponent is defeated. This is no different than most characters, but since her neutral has a lot of holes, you generally want to avoid playing it as much as possible. With that said, let's look at Ino's neutral tools. At long ranges, you generally have three main attacks: Horizontal Chemical Love, Anti-Depressive Scale, and Aerial Hard Slash. Horizontal Chemical Love, or shortened to HCL, is a projectile that has incredibly fast startup and knocks the opponent down as long as they are low enough to the ground. This leads to Okizeme at most ranges. As good as this is, there are a lot of risks associated with this move. First, the hitbox is thin and only hits standing opponents. Second, most characters can dash underneath it to dodge it entirely for a punish. Third, if Ino is hit during the recovery of the move, she'll be in a counter hit state. Since this move is very risky, I suggest using it mainly for counter pokes or when you have meter to relevant cancel it. As a side note, there is a technique to make this projectile hit lower, potentially hitting some dashing and crouching opponents. But the technique is difficult, so I would not worry about it for the time being. Perhaps I'll cover it in a future video. The second attack, Anti-Depressive Scale, is another projectile. Since the name is long, the community generally calls it Note, so that's what I'll be using for the rest of the guide. Anyways, Note has a few special properties. One is that you can control the direction of the projectile by pressing up or down. While controlling the Note, you want to keep two things in mind. One is that you want to aim the note where you expect the opponent to go rather than where the opponent is. This is because the projectile speed is slow and the opponent has plenty of time to react to it, especially at farther ranges. Expect most players to jump, so be ready to press up. Second, if you repeatedly press up or down, the note will move at a steeper angle. so you want to match those directions. As a heads up, if you're pressing up, you may jump once you recovered from the move. If you want to avoid doing this, you can repeatedly press punch to stay on the ground. Now for the second special property, the number of hits increases as the note travels further. For example, at point blank range, you will only get 1 hit, but at full screen, you'll get 5. So take this into consideration when approaching the opponent when they block or get hit by the projectile. Lastly, you can execute the note both on the ground and in the air. The aerial version has faster startup, but you have less control of its movement. If you want to execute this near the ground, I suggest you do a quarter circle back, up, then punch. On success, you can see a puff of dust underneath Ino's feet. The grounded version has longer startup, but you have more control. I suggest using the grounded version at full screen and aerial version at mid-screen. As for what to do when the opponent gets hit, I suggest doing the following options. If the opponent blocks on the ground, dash forward for a mix-up. If they get hit, go for a combo. If the opponent blocks in the air, you can drag them down to the ground by repeatedly pressing punch. If the opponent gets hit, you can get a knockdown with a chemical lump combo. The third attack, Aerial Hard Slash, is a great long-range normal. It does have a long startup, so you generally want to aim to hit at the tip of the attack. The move itself does not get a knockdown, but you can combo into things that do. At long ranges, you can cancel directly to Chemical Love. At closer ranges, you can go to Crouching Dust or Crouching Slash to Chemical Love, depending on whether or not the opponent is standing. Now to mid-range. You have a few effective choices here. For non-committal normals, you can utilize Crouching and Standing Slash. Crouching Slash is slightly faster, but has less range. Both are fairly decent pokes, but the problem is, at farther ranges, combo potential is limited. You can cancel to Horizontal Chemical Love for a knockdown, but this only hits standing opponents. Standing Slash, however, does force standing on counter hit, so you can potentially get a knockdown on crouching opponents. You can also cancel into Slash version and Stroke the Big Tree, but this will not combo on normal hit and can be interrupted on block. I recommend only using this for knowledge checks and counter hit situations. The second choice is Stroke the Big Tree. This move is fairly slow, but it lowers her profile so she can evade attacks that do not hit near the ground. For example, if Raven decides to poke with Crouching Slash, she will go underneath it. The issue with this move is that the starting and ending part of the attack does not low profile, so if the opponent decides to attack early or late into the move, you'll be counter hit even if it's not a low hitting attack. So I recommend using this attack only if you are predicting an evadable attack. As for move strength, Slash version staggers the opponent so it can combo at close ranges. Heavy Slash version has longer startup, but travels further and launches opponents on successful hits. For some characters, you can dash for a combo on normal launch, but it's quite difficult to do. So for the time being, I recommend doing a note and go for a mix-up rather than attempting a combo. The third choice is Slash version of Sultry Performance, also known as Dive. This attack is fast and can add an extra angle to your aerial approaches. The problem is that it is generally punishable on block, and the reward is small unless it counter hits. I suggest only using this attack for whiff punishing or as an approach tool when you have meter derailment cancel. For close range attacks, Standing Punch is your fastest normal at 4 frames, and can be cancelled into most normals. It is a great attack, but the biggest drawback is that it does not hit crouching opponents. Crouching Punch and Crouching Kick is your next set of fast attacks at 5 frames. Crouching Punch has less range and hits mid, but its advantages on block. Great button if you are intending to frame trap your opponent. Crouching Kick hits low and much farther, so it's a great counterpoke tool. The last normal we're going over is Forward Punch. This attack is much slower than the other ones at 9 frames, but has good horizontal range and upper body invincibility. So if you're predicting a high hitting attack, you can use this to counter. As for anti-airs, you generally have 4 basic choices. Forward Punch, which has upper body invincibility. This is good for catching attacks with low hurt boxes. It has good horizontal range, but will have trouble anti-airing attacks directly above her. Standing Punch hits opponents closer to her and is very fast. However, it doesn't have upper body invincibility, so you have to be mindful on how you use it. For air-to-air attacks, I would suggest using her Aerial Punch or Throw. Both are very fast, so I recommend using them when opponents are too high to hit with grounded anti-airs. As a general note, the way you use these attacks and how they interact will differ based on situation and matchup. There are plenty of attacks not shown here that may be effective against certain characters and playstyles, so use this section as a starting point and lab further if the choices here doesn't satisfy your needs. Since we now have a good idea on ranges and speed of Ino's attacks, let's look at some basic punishes. But before we go in, I'd like to give a warning that there will be a lot of factors when it comes to punishes and interruptions. You have to take in consideration of things like range, block type, and whether or not the opponent is standing. The thing I will be showing are reliable moves, but may not always be the most efficient one, so lab accordingly. Alright, for close ranges that require a fast punish, use Throw. Throws have a 1 frame startup, so it's the fastest thing you can retaliate with as long as you're in range. Holding back and pressing hard slash is the easiest execution wise, but in some situations, it may be beneficial to press forward hard slash instead. The reason why is that if the opponent is not in throw range, the hard slash attack will come out. Forward hard slash has a 5 frame startup compared to the 13 that is back hard slash, making it harder to interrupt. After throwing, you can do a note on Okizeme or Roman cancel for a combo. For another fast close range punish, crouching kick to crouching dust is simple and reliable. It may not do much damage, but it will lead to a note Okizeme and work on both standing and crouching opponents. You can also alter the string to do things like crouching slash to horizontal chemical love for more damage if they are close enough and standing. For slower and more damaging punishes at close to mid-range, you can use Forward Punch. This opener is best for air dash combos, so if you're having trouble doing them, I suggest replacing it with Crouching Dust until you're mechanically proficient. For reversals that go into the air, Forward Punch is again a solid choice. I suggest doing a basic anti-air combo if you're having trouble doing air dash sequences. Now that we have a basic plan for neutral and how to convert off of them, let's look at what you can do after getting a knockdown. As a heads up, Ino has a plethora of mix-ups you can do on Wake Up, but a lot of them are difficult and situational. Since this is a beginner's guide, I will stick to the basics. Perhaps I will introduce other options in future guides. Let's start with Crouching Dust Enders. For these, you generally want to cancel into note and direct it downwards. By doing this, the projectile will hit the opponent as they are waking up, potentially locking them into place for you to approach and do a mix-up. As a general note, you want to delay cancel this projectile because some characters may hit on the ground based on the distance. You want to avoid this at all costs. If you do accidentally do it early, you can adjust by controlling the notes to go higher and hit behind them as they are waking up. Once you've locked the opponent down, you can go for the first basic layer of mix-ups. One high, then low, or empty dash into low. The combo I'm showing is a basic one that can be looped very easily. I highly recommend using this mid-screen until you're at a distance where it can combo the opponent into the corner. As for the reason of not adding crouching slash in the high string is because some characters are not wide enough for the combo to complete while standing. Lastly, do not cancel crouching dust to note unless the opponent is hit. Note has a long startup so you can get countered if the opponent blocks. Be sure to confirm the hit. A good way to practice this is to set the dummy to random block and change the string based on hit. The second layer is to do a double high. This is effective against players who fuzzy block the one high, one low mix-up. If you are not aware what this is a defensive option select that lets you block the layer 1 mix-up with one set of inputs. Check out our dedicated guide for more details. Anyways, there are a few ways of doing this. One is to dash slightly higher and cancel into another normal. For fast chains, you can use kick to slash or slash to kick. For a slower double overhead, you can utilize aerial dust instead. The third method is to simply do a dash attack and follow up with another. This method nets better combo and Okizeme potential, but is much riskier to do since the opponent has a fairly large window to interrupt. I suggest using this when you know the opponent is concentrating on blocking and respecting your strings. Now, as I've mentioned earlier, Ino has many more options for mix-ups, but I think these two basic layers should be sufficient for the beginner and intermediate level. I highly recommend mastering these first before moving on to other mix-ups. Alright, let's look at another combo for Crouching Dust. For some characters, you can combo into Horizontal Chemical Love. This allows you to do more damage and still do a meaty note for Okizeme. The challenging part here is that you need to do an instant air note for this to work. The reason why we are doing this over the grounded version is because aerial note has faster startup, and this is the only way the note will reach the opponent in time. Otherwise, they will be able to jump out. I recommend the inputs quarter circle back, any up direction, then punch. If you do it successfully, you should see a puff of dust beneath Ino's feet. Just remember, this only works on some characters and not the entire cast. If you're having trouble, stick with the previous combo, Crouching Dust to note. Also, as a side note, some of you may be wondering why I'm not cancelling the Horizontal Chemical Love into the vertical one. This does more damage, but significantly decreases the advantage that you get. You no longer get a note mix-up, which is much more important than getting a marginal increase in damage. I highly recommend not cancelling into Vertical Chemical Love unless the extra damage can end the round. The next one we're going to go over is the mid-range Horizontal Chemical Love. You will most likely get this knockdown through raw usage in neutral or from a standing or crouching slash combo. For these, you will not be able to do a meaty note like the previous combos without using meter. So in this case, you would want to dash up twice to do a high-low mix-up I previously mentioned. The challenge here is that since you no longer have the note to lock the opponent down, you have to precisely time your attacks. If the opponent has an invincible reversal and has been using it a lot, you might want to do a high attack that is a safe jump. Safe jumps are attacks that hit high under normal conditions, but will recover in time to block if the opponent chooses to do an invincible reversal. To show you what I mean, I'm going to record Ino doing a safe jump attack with aerial slash. You can see that if Kai does nothing, the attack will hit, but if Kai does an invincible reversal, she will block. Very useful option select. If you want more details on how this works, check out our dedicated video. Links will be in the cards and details. Now there are two challenges with this approach. One is that the window for safe jumps is fairly small, especially if the opponent has a fast reversal. The other is that characters in this game have different wake-up timing, so you have to adjust based on your opponent. A lot of Ino players do things like with aerial punch on the first dash to adjust their internal timing. If you're having trouble, I suggest trying it out. For aerial vertical chemical love enders, you have less time to dash up twice, so you need to do one long dash. As a side note, you can also do a technique called hover instant air dash to do another approach, but this is much harder to do. This may look like a simple dash to air dash, but it's actually not. It involves a fairly awkward input, so I wouldn't worry about it right now and focus on the basics. I will perhaps introduce this technique in a future video. For dive enders, we have a few choices. Slash version will net us a good knockdown mid-screen. The knockdown will give a pretty significant advantage, but the problem is the distance to the opponent is too close for a good node Okizeme. You'll get 1 or 2 hits at most. So instead, I would simply go for a dash mix-up. If you're having trouble timing the hit, I suggest whiffing a standing punch to adjust the timing. Kick version you'll generally only use in the corner and will net a similar situation to slash version. However, since you have better positioning in the corner, you can do setups such as Dust Roman Castle to do a meaty projectile on the opponent's wake up. Last is the punch version. This one, unlike the other versions, will knock you into the air with successful hits. If you use this in aerial combos, you can get a knockdown with significant advantage. The most important part is that it also pushes you away from your opponent, letting you do a multi-hitting node for Okizeme. This will differ based on character and combo, but you will either need to do an instant air node after landing, or aerial node while you're falling from the dive. That should cover most of Ino's basic knockdowns and Okizeme. As I mentioned earlier, I'm not going through her advanced techniques yet, as this is a beginner's guide. I know it may be tempting to do the harder and cooler looking things, but I suggest mastering these basic techniques first before moving on. For conversions, I have dedicated combo videos, so I recommend taking a look at those to see what Ino is capable of. However, for the purpose of this being a beginner's guide, I suggest starting off with easier combos that focus on Okizeme and ease of use rather than damage. I find air dash combos especially rough in the beginning, so I would advise learning those once you're more comfortable with the game. Alright, let's start the combo section. Hope that helped. If you have any further questions, please let me know in the comments or come visit while I stream. I'll be playing Xrd regularly and will be glad to help. Also, if this video does well, I'll make more advanced guides, so please share and spread the word. Alright, until next time, have fun with Guilty Gear Xrd.